All right, gosh, thank you so much for coming. I said my expectation it would be Melanie, myself, Adam, and my husband, Eric. I said it'd be a grand group of 4, but thank you all for coming here out on a weekday here. And thanks to Melanie and Adam and the people of St. Faith's and St. Hildegard's for just fostering this kind of an effort in which artists, beginners and people who've been at it a long time can come and talk about what they're doing and see how it might connect with who you are. So I want to read you something first, and those of you who know me well know that audience participation is an important part of what I do, so you're going to be sharing a little bit with each other. So one of the pieces that I did multiples of, both on my antique letterpress and with a carved block, is a quote by petroleum geologist Rick Bass. So Rick Bass and his partner Elizabeth, many years ago, during the winter, went and lived in a place called Yak, Montana, where in the town of Yak, if you wanted to go out at night, you went to a place called the Dirty Shame Saloon, because most people in Yak, Montana were running from something. Many people say that about this part of the world, actually. They said that about Seattle, and it's probably true of Vancouver, BC, that many of us come west to leave other things behind. But in Rick Bass's book called Winter Notes from Montana, this is a quote that has been really important to me and really expressed something of what I know of my own life. He says this: "There are forces in the woods, forces in the world that lay claim to you, that lay a hand on your shoulder so gently that you do not even feel it, not at first. All of the smallest elements, the direction of the breeze one day, a single sentence that a friend might speak to you, a raven flying across the meadow and circling back again, lay claim to you eventually with a cumulative power." So it's not an exaggeration to say that this is actually the story of my life, because my life has not been a straight line at all, and I bet yours hasn't either. So what I would like you to do, just to get us warmed up, is just to turn to a person next to you and briefly share, if you can, no pressure, passing is fine, what in your own life has laid claim to you over time with a cumulative power. What's one thing in your own life that has laid claim to you with a cumulative power? Just a couple of minutes. Just share. See if you can come up with something. Something that's laid claim to you in your own life over time. Willing just to stand up and do a 30-second sharing of what they said. Anybody. It'll only hurt for a moment.
Choral music.
Choral music as something that...
You started in school and they haven't got me out of the choir sales.
Great. Somebody else, yes. Poetry. Yes. Anybody else? Beauty. That's true of you, Melanie.
Relationships.
Yes. Yeah. Love? Oh. Friendship. I'm going to read it again. There are forces in the woods, forces in the world that lay claim to you, that lay a hand on your shoulder so gently that you do not even feel it, not at first. All of the smallest elements, the direction of the breeze one day, a single sentence that a friend might speak to you, a raven flying across the meadow and circling back again, Ricky, lay claim to you eventually with a cumulative power. So I had the nerve to entitle this little piece, and I put spirit. down here. And you'll see the framed version of this. Oh, good. The framed version of this is red. That the block I printed on it was red. So I made 50 of these. Yes, I would be happy to do this. Just tell me where to put it.
Bless you.
Absolutely. All right. So, as I said, this little quote just sums up my life, and I hope yours. For me, life has been about, another way of saying it, being grasped by something beyond myself that over time has enticed me or urged me to stretch out my hand towards something and to take some sort of action towards it, not knowing how it would go. That's an important part of it. And not knowing where it would take me. And being willing to go for it and accept the imperfections of what it would be like to be a beginner in something. So it reminds me of a story, probably apocryphal, about the theologian Paul Tillich. So if you don't know, Paul Tillich is a German-American theologian, and one of his thoughts was that doubt is an essential, in fact, you might even say is central to any kind of experience of faith. So Tillich was speaking to a group of students one day, and during the question and answer session afterwards, a student who was rather sure of himself stood up and asked this question, was said to have asked this question. He said, "Dr. Tillich, do you believe that the Bible is the infallible Word of God?" And Tillich said this. He said, "If it grasps you, yes. If you grasp it, no." That's my kind of theologian. And so I believe in my own life being sort of grasped by the mystery that makes a claim on you is not only important, but would be, my way of thinking, of God. That's how I know what God is up to in my life, by that sense of being grasped by something outside my ability to understand it. You may not be surprised to hear that I've been grasped by many things in my life. Many different things that have intrigued me and laid claim to me. God being one of them, a God of mystery, love, compassion, justice. The wonder and beauty of learning and teaching. I was grasped by that very early on in my life. I have been grasped by the process of discovery. When I was in corporate world, I went from regular management to doing discovery work. And that's what I found out I was good at. I have been grasped by words, the beauty of words, poetry in particular, and finally by the visual arts. And so here I am today in a place that through Adam and Melanie and others is in a place that honors the arts as a way of experiencing deep humanity, the transformation of humanity, and the intersection of humanity and divinity. It's just thrilled to be here in this place. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my particular journey towards ink on paper. I mean, that's very specific, isn't it? And it begins in college. This is the first piece of original art I was ever given. And I was given to it by a man whose name is George Evelyn. You can Google him. He was a very famous animator, and I don't know which studios he worked for, but this is an engraving called Captain Nemo at Home. And it's Captain Nemo and all kinds of things related to fish. His minions behind him it's the most incredible imaginative array here. And this was done, it's 2 of 8. I didn't even know what that 2/8 meant. In other words, there were 8 engravings made. I got the second one. He kept the first. I've actually reached out to him. He lives in the Bay Area and said, guess what I have? Guess what I still have? And he just couldn't believe it. So when I saw this and he gave it to me, I thought, how did he do that? Ink on paper. So that's where it started. A little bit later, and I didn't bring it with me, I was given by another friend of mine who's a student a woodcut, and it's a German woodcut of a child holding a kind of stuffed animal, and grays and blacks, beautiful woodcut, and again, ink on paper. I then married a screen printer. My first husband was a screen printer. And I have this annoying habit of marrying what I'd like to be. And that was the case of that. So I married a screen printer, and I understood a lot about the screen printing process. And we had a lot of screen prints in our home. And I just, that was, again, ink on paper of a very different kind. I'm going to fast forward to through a lot of years. And when I came to Canada in particular, Carrie Baisley sitting right there, one of the first ink on paper prints I saw in Canada was Douglas Cranmer's transformation serigraph of the man and frog. And Carrie, I've never been able to find that print, although I have found a lot of other of Cranmer's prints. And so in Canada, I got very enamored of people like Robert Davidson, Douglas Cranmer, Susan Point, and the wonderful things that they did of ink on paper. The Cape Dorset prints. So before I stepped down from being the bishop and the archbishop here, I began taking classes in letterpress. So I have always loved the written word, and this was the perfect combination of art, that is antique letterpress, ink on paper, and the written word. And actually, when my husband and Eric and I got married, so Eric is a deacon of the church, also a kind of poet of sorts. And for our wedding, he commissioned Myrna Kelleher, who is a Seattle letterpress artist, with this William Stafford poem called A Story That Could Be True. So she made, I guess, 50 copies of this, lino cut, so that's again a certain kind of ink on paper, with the letterpress poem, and we gave it to the people who attended our very small wedding. So that's another one. Later, so I took letterpress. I also took letterpress with Ellie Matthews and Carl Youngman, who were the proprietors in Port Townsend, Washington, of a press called the North Press. And they do, if you know poetry, Copper Canyon Press, which does small, very famous poets. A lot of them are Northwest poets. And took a course with Ellie and Carl, also in letterpress. They're not block makers or anything like that, but they're just exquisite letterpress artists. The other thing I then began to do is when I moved back to Seattle, I thought, well, gosh, where do I start? It was pandemic times. And I taught a really quite old, quite frail, pretty famous lino cut artist to give me lessons in his home in West Seattle. And I would go over there and he would just school me in doing that. And so I did that, as well as taking classes at a place called Seattle Visual Concepts, which had both letterpress and other visual artists. And I was always the least skilled person in the class. These were people who did letterpress and other kinds of visual arts, ink on paper, for a living. They had their own presses that they made their living from. And I was the go to the foot of the class person. The good news was I always finished my projects first, because mine were never very complex. So the idea here was to just start someplace, to not let the color of my hair, my own fear, or anything else get in the way. And to just start someplace and to just swallow. I'm a person who really loves to be competent. And I have been competent, I think, for a number of years in particular areas, but to just not let that stop me. And to not let the fact that I was terrified of taking an arts class, even in high school, stop me. And to think, I've got this many years, what am I going to do with them? I don't want to keep doing everything I've done before. So what's really captivated me in the ink on paper, and I was trying to explain some of this, whether it's letterpress or block printing, was you can make multiples. You know, you can make bunches of mistakes and try again. I never feel like, oh gosh, you know, if I learn something in this, I have to commit another month to trying it again. It feels like I can experiment and discover, and I can handcraft it. So some people who do block printing, I'll show you the materials in just a minute, they after they do block printing for a while, they go to doing it electronically, and there are programs I've heard about, you know, where you can learn to take those very images and create perfect images of them that then you can duplicate on. You can create fabric, you know, you can design fabric, you can design tile, you can design all kinds of things. You can create t-shirts, you can do, you know, none of that's my interest. I like the handcrafted, mistake-ridden, discovery-replete kind of process, and that's all I have to do right now. So my other, I guess it's theological, is that with discernment and with the God that we're talking about, you just have to be faithful to the next step. You don't have to figure it all out. It's like a scavenger hunt, kind of, or those scavenger hunts where you go and you're supposed to go to under the old oak tree and you open it up and, I'm supposed to go to the chicken coop. Then, I'm supposed to go. It's like that you just have to stay present to the urging or the grasping or the enticing of the moment. And it doesn't have to make sense to others. Eric has been so good, and he was the one who actually went and got the antique letterpress machine and took it from the people who were selling it, you know, and I thought, I know he's wondering, like, what the heck is she going to do with this? And so it's great to have people who cooperate with you in this. But in a sense, you just have to give it a try. Whatever it is. If it's poetry, you just got to sit down and put pen to paper. If it's painting, you just got to get out the canvas and put something on. You know, if it's creating a new community, you just have to go to talk to somebody about it. You just have to take that step. And then the other pieces of it, and I think about this around congregational development too, you know, you should be faithful to the next step before you, and then the door, we hope, or the window, or the vista will become clear about where you go next. You don't have to have a strategic plan. In fact, please don't have one, I would say. I never operated that way. I don't want to operate that way. It's too dominant for me. It's not responsive enough. So that's what I'm doing now. And to have this little show where it's sort of like, make some things, please, is a great way of doing that. So for me, I have no manifesto about the subject matter. I'm learning, I love the pattern play even more than the pictorial kinds of pieces that I've done. I like the pattern play, I like pattern, and I like unusual color combinations. So I don't have a manifesto about, you know, this is the deep meaning of everything I'm doing. It's about the process, because I actually believe that at every age and stage, God is calling us to be maybe a little different than we were before, and to try things that we haven't done before. So it's about noticing and trying. Yes. Yep, God is always making a new thing in our lives, and it doesn't matter what age, what circumstance. So I'm just going to show you some of the materials. So again, block printing can be done on anything. So if you've ever done lino cut, lino typically is sometimes backed with wood, other times it's just plain old linoleum. Like I know a block printer, a lino cut person, kind of out in our Seattle area, who just goes and gets the extra runs of linoleum of a particular kind, and that's what he uses because it's cheap to do. So this is another cheap substance. This is rubber. This is rubber. So like a pack of about 6 to 8 of these is like $40. These are the carving tools. Now these are carving tools that are used, these are Swiss carving tools, so I find carving tools, it's good to invest in some, but I'm talking $25 for that. They're even carving tools, so when we do a workshop here, this is a speedball carving tool that has $10 for the whole thing. It has different points in it that you can just carve and put them back together. So the process is the following. You have to have an idea. And typically so these are stamps. What I'm doing right now is stamps, not a big piece of lino or something where I'm carving a picture on it and then printing it like that, or with a printing machine, which I don't have a lino cut printing machine. I've got a couple of little presses I could do it on. I've got a book press that I could do it on. But what you do is you get you get graph paper, could be triangular graph paper or regular old square graph paper, and you design something. Some of these, as I've said to people talking about, are what are called tessellating patterns, which is a pattern which is the same on every side, so that when you print them together, they disclose a pattern that you wouldn't have seen in the individual block. So like the one that's called quilt in the back, there's a tessellating pattern, and you see these lines that emerge. The little one over here is a tessellating pattern, but they don't have to be. They could be anything. So there's a combination of just little stamps that I've cut, like the dandelion, which is a stalk, a thing, and its little pieces, or other ones that I've cut. Or you can do tessellating patterns, which are triangular, square, fan-shaped, octagonal, and there's some other ones. An OG is another kind of pattern that tessellates. But so you plan it, you think through it, you line it out, you find a way to transfer the image onto the rubber, you cut it out, you carve it, and then you print it to see all the mistakes you've made. And then you go back and trim that up again, and then pretty soon you've got color choice, paper choice. So there's so many factors, the kind of paper, the kind of ink. I use Japanese inks, Tsuneko inks. And these are inks there's some really easily washable inks, others that are more difficult, or you can actually use inks you would use on a press with a brayer and make it a more permanent kind of opaque. There's so many choices to do. And in the process of kind of playing, pretty soon a pattern will emerge that you feel happy with. So it's easy to, it's not easy to do. It's something you can do with not a lot of materials. The current stamps I have would probably fit in a box like so, and there's so many different things you can do with them. So many different things you can do. So that concludes my talk, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any questions. Oh, there you go. I'm sure there are no questions.